The next part of the skirt is to create the lining pieces. One thing I neglected to do in the last video is to address. The next thing we're going to do is create the lining pieces. And one thing I neglected to do in the last video is the waistband. Now I generally cut my waistbands after I've put my skirt together and ensured a proper fit, but let's go ahead and just do it. If I look at this line right here, it's 30 3/4 inches, so I'm going to put a two-way grain line, 25 inches vertically. Select all the stitching lines and change those. Offset my cutting lines. And then intersect. And that takes care of the waistband. Group it. Okay, to create our lining pieces, we're going to be modifying the side front. So the only lining pieces we really need to create right now are the center front, the side back, and the center back. So I'm selecting those three pieces and I'm going to copy them. I'm holding my control key and dragging them straight down. Then I'm going to select all three, zoom selected, and ungroup. Now the lining hemline is going to be 1.5 inches. I like to do my lining hems a 1/2 inch shorter than my fashion fabric hems. That'll keep the lining from peeking out below the hem turn up. So I'm going to offset 1.5. And then I'm going to intersect. Then I can select all of these old hemlines and delete them. Missed one here. And missed that one. So that takes care of that. The next thing we have to do is to come up here and change our text. TE for text. I'm just going to copy that. My text is always inserted at 0.15, so I have to change that. So we'll come back and we'll modify that. Moving on to the center back lining pattern. I've taken this back to the raw pattern without any dashed seam lines or offsets or hemline because we need to do some modifications to this. Now this kick plate is going to turn back on itself, right sides together, and you're going to stitch this area right here. This is 1.5 inches. Let's put a point. At 1.5 inches. So this kick plate is going to turn back to this point, and let me just break that here. Change this to a stitching line. And then you're going to sew this along the stitching line, turn it right to your corner, and then that will keep this right side turned back. But what we need to do on the lining, we're going to select the whole pattern, we're going to copy it, hold your control key, move it over, and then we're going to flip it on its vertical axis. This pattern then turns into the right back lining. And this turns into the left back lining. So since this is sewn back, we need to cut the lining into this body. And to do that, I'm going to first measure how wide the kick plate is. I'm going to first measure how wide the kick plate is, and it's 1.5. So I'm going to offset this outside line 3 inches. Let's go ahead and intersect here to here. This and this are then going to be turned into stitching lines. I'm going to intersect here to here and here to here. I'm going to go ahead and intersect here to here. That will go away. That will go away. That can go away. As can those. So let's go ahead and put our hemline in, which is 1.5 inches. On both sides. I can get rid of this text here. This is the hem turn up, so I'm going to change this to a solid line. Okay, so this is a stitching line. We're going to go ahead and just select all of our stitching lines now. And then we can go ahead and offset. Now, on the right side, this is going to offset this way. And then we can intersect. Like that. Okay, so those are done. Group them. We're going to get them close to each other. So there are the lining pieces, and here is the skirt piece. The last thing we have to do on this skirt is to modify this side front piece. Now we're moving over to the side front and creating the pocket. And like I said, the pocket is going to be formed of two of the fashion fabric areas, the pocket bag, which goes from the waist to the hip line, and then the pocket itself, which is created through the formation above the high hip line. So let's look at the pocket. We've got a line that is angled up from the seam line from the front, center front, to the side of this side front. Angles up from here, and then it angles down to approximately the high hip line, and I'm going to curve that. Also, we need to notice that it is gaping out, and that is what allows you to put your hand in. So let me show you how we're going to do that. First thing I want to look at is how far down this starts, and I'm going to say about 1 3/4 to 2 inches. So let's go ahead and put a 2-inch mark here, 2-inch point. I'm going to change this to a dot dash dot. Draw a line, right click on that point, angle it up slightly. Next thing I need to do to create the gaping is to make this pocket wider than what it's sewn into, which is the pocket bag. So I am going to offset 1/2 inch here. Then I'm going to intersect the high hip line to that offset. I'm going to draw an arc from the end of that line to the conjunction of the offset and high hip line. Now let's select all the lines that create the pocket. I'm going to create one more arc from here to here. Although I don't need it, I'm going to select that. Let me just go up here and make sure I have everything selected. Get that arc or that point. Okay. I'm going to copy it over to here. Now we're going to do some intersections. Intersect that line to the angled line. That line to the hip line. Okay, so this is the pocket overlay. This section here is going to need to be lined. So let's go ahead and change this to our dashed stitching line. We're going to offset our hemline, which is 2 inches. 2 inches for the fashion fabric. Now this is tapered, so we need to do our little trick. 2 inches. Cut it at those points. Select both those segmented lines. Flip on the horizontal axis. I can get rid of the points and intersect down to here. This goes back to a straight, solid line. I'm not going to put the seam allowances in just yet. The next thing I need to do is to create the bottom lining, which is going to go from this hip line down to here. This hip line is going to change into a dashed stitching line. Then I need to select all of this. Then I need to select all of this and copy it. I need to intersect this to this. Let's get the text. That's 15.5, so let's put a grain line symbol of 12 inches in. Two-way grain, 12 inches vertically. I keep on forgetting to change this back. So now let's go ahead and do the offsets on this pattern for our seam allowance. And then this is the lower side skirt lining. And we need to cut 2 of the lining fabrics. So that's done. We can go ahead and finish the offsets for the cutting lines here. Now, one thing I do want to do while I'm here is to put some alignment markers in. I just put midpoints on each of these sections, and I'm just pulling a line out and typing in 0.125 for the length. And then I'm going to label these. And I'll come back up here and do my intersections. Don't forget to mock this up because this half inch extension may or may not work. It may need to be extended out more. Let's put a 12-inch grain line in. Vertically placed. And that's done. It's fashion fabric. I do want to come down here. Actually, I want to make another one of these. Okay, here's what I messed up. This lining here only needs to go to the hip line, so we're going to put a cut line here. That can go away. We'll take that off and redo that. This is the pocket lining. Come back over here, midpoint here. Draw a line, 0.125, label it C. That can go away. And this is done again. So this goes onto this. This is the lining, so I need to change the hemline to 1.5. And then intersect. All right, so that lining piece is done. This we've already done the hemline on that. So the last piece we need to do is what I'm calling the pocket bag, and it encompasses all of this. Now the lining is the lower lining is going to sew to that, so we're going to turn that into a dashed stitching line. We're going to put our midpoint in. Draw our alignment marker. Label it. Okay, this is the offset. We can go ahead and get rid of it. We're going to intersect this to this and get rid of that. Go ahead and intersect our high hip line and this seam to here. Let's put our grain line. Let's put a 5" in. Vertical. This is the inner pocket. And bag. And we want 2 of the fashion fabric. Let's put a little text in here. I'm going to make that smaller. And then I'm going to rotate it. And copy it. And then rotate it again. I can scooch it here. Let's intersect here to here. We can get rid of this. And now let's do our cutting lines. And our seam allowance offsets. And finally, our intersections. All right. This we can just group and get out of the way. So just to give you a visual, this is going to overlay to here. This lining piece is going to go to the inside of that. And this lower lining is going to attach here. All right, so we've got the 1.5 inch hem here. We've got the 2-inch hem here. This didn't need a hem. This is fashion fabric. This is lining. This is lining. And this is fashion fabric.